right, good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back to the third session on responsible conduct of research. And I'll again be reiterating about facts, what drives people to commit research misconduct. I hope we remember what all constitutes research misconduct, what all is a part of research misconduct. uh, Falsification, fabrication, plagiarism, misconduct in giving authorship, misconduct in reviewing the papers, misconduct in monitoring of data, misconduct in acquisition of data. I think we are fully aware of all the activities that will be considered as misconduct. We have also talked about the penalties as to what will happen if somebody is found guilty of indulging in irresponsible behavior while performing research. So I would again want to reiterate why people commit research misconduct. Please look at this cartoon. What do you see? You see a gentleman with a huge, it can be a gentleman or a lady. So research is gender neutral because most of the people take up this avenue for academic pursuits. So this gentleman here, you can see that his mind is full of question marks. So he or she might have indulged in research misconduct because of poor supervision. Please remember it always, poor supervision. What does he say? I was scared to go to my PI. He or she used to scream and yell at me when the things did not go uh, as planned. So what do we understand by as planned? I mean, what was the plan? Can research go according to your plan? Will you get results according to the plan 100% of times? No, there would be outliers. There would be results which do not, I mean, there would be results which may not adhere to your hypothesis, but those results are very, very significant. Those outliers should not be ignored right away, and discussion should be held about a kind of result which is not adhering to your hypothesis, okay, or which may be an outlier. I have discussed it earlier too. If you're getting the result more than thrice, because you would be repeating your experiments 3 times, if you're getting the consistent result consistently, you should not ignore that result. You should try to find out a reason why you are getting that particular result, because there would be a mechanism or there would be a logical reasoning on why you're getting that result. So you should not be scared of your PIs. This is a first thing, right? You have to have open communication with your supervisor, right? Okay, so whoever is assigned to you as a supervisor, you should periodically discuss your work with your supervisors so that you and they have a good understanding of what you are getting, whether you're getting the results properly, whether you're performing your experiments properly. Is there any deviation in the way you're performing your what experiments, right? So never be scared of your PI, and the scariness will go away if you have open communication with your supervisors, right? Inadequate training. What do you understand by inadequate training? After 2 years of a postdoctoral fellowship, I still did not know how to properly publish Western blotting data. Western blotting is just an example because it's a common technique which is used in laboratories. So, and most of the discrepancies, falsification and fabrication has been reported in Western blotting data and microscopy data. That is why we are taking it as an example. Otherwise, there can be other examples too, right? So this gentleman, probably his or her pre-doctoral training, like pre-doctoral is while in MSc or master's degree, or maybe in the doctoral, like you are doctoral students, aren't you? So before that, you must have completed your post-graduation. So probably you were not trained well during your post-graduation, right? Trained well means like, all the necessary training that is required to become a master of your subject that had not been adequately imparted. So inadequate training is also one reason why you may indulge in a shortcut. Misconduct is a shortcut that a person is taking, right? Shortcut to do what? To get quick results, quick success, maybe publish their result faster, isn't it? Then what is the third one? Competitive pressures, right? Competitive pressures would mean that maybe you are in a setting where the other labs are publishing very well, right? Okay, and they are publishing prolifically. Prolifically, I had earlier also discussed this, that prolific publishers or authors are those who publish one paper per month, right? As an on an average of one paper per month, that would mean 12 papers in a year, right? And if most of them are research articles, it's not possible. You need some time, even if you are publishing papers in collaborations. Still the frequency does not match. It means that some shortcuts have been taken, right? Some checkpoints have not been followed properly. So competitive pressure, what kind of pressure is there? Publish or perish. We live in a publish or perish culture. If you do not publish at a regular rate, so there is a chance that you would lose your identity as a academician. But then you should again weigh the pros and cons, because the cons are more as compared to pros. So it's better to stick to a particular timeline, make goals for yourself, and make achievable goals. Achievable would be something where you are able to give enough time for deliberation on whether the data is correct or not, right? Whether analysis has happened properly. Okay, so keep this picture in mind because it will be very useful throughout your journey. Personal circumstances, like this is a condition which is more relevant to people who work abroad. So maybe they were applying for a green card, or maybe they wanted a visa extension, isn't it? So they require some documentation of achievement, right? So maybe this is why they got pressurized to make a good paper and get good publications. So the number mattered there, the quality would have mattered, so they indulged in misconduct, right? Okay, so why do people indulge in misconduct? Because they want quick papers, probably they are under pressure, the communication with the supervisor is not great, they're not able to communicate to the supervisor that we did not get the desired results as planned, so that should not be there, right? Okay, so how will you address this? I mean, when you'll be students, when you'll be interacting with your supervisors, how will you address this? How will you make sure that you have an open communication with your supervisor?
We need to interact more.
Interact more. So you need to have a timetable. Maybe probably daily you should interact. Maybe twice a week you should interact. You should have two meetings. At the beginning of the week and at the end of the week, on Monday and Saturday, or probably Tuesday and Friday, so that you would discuss what you're going to perform in that week and what was the result at the end of the week, right? So this particular culture would at least help in curtailing things which are going wrong right in the beginning. So you don't have to wait for 6 months to discover that something was wrong with the experiments, right? Okay, so please interact with your supervisors. Individual psychology would mean that some people feel that they can flout all the rules and regulations. Nobody is going to challenge their authority, or maybe because of foolishness they indulge in these practices. So I would consider it to be foolish, because it's not right to indulge in such irresponsible practices. Then we had also talked about, another kind of falsification, another kind of misconduct in terms of plagiarism. So we should try to write ethically, okay, from start to finish, isn't it? So from start to finish would mean that you'll start with a synopsis probably. You'll start with reading material for your synopsis. Isn't it? When you write your synopsis, how will you start? I mean, what is the beginning going to be? Looking for sources, like you'll survey the literature, you'll talk to your guide, and then you'll find some mutual, topic of interest, and some interesting objectives that you would define from the research gaps in the literature itself, right? So from start to beginning, you should prepare well. So how will you prepare? You will take help from different sources. We had talked about the different sources. What are the sources? You have primary sources and secondary sources. So you will try to adhere to the, you have to adhere to the primary sources wherever it's possible. And why is it necessary to focus on primary sources? It's more, what? It's truer because you get access to the original thoughts of the author. You get access to the original interpretation of how the data was interpreted, right? Because during the course of citations and during the course of conversion of this primary source into a secondary source, there is a chance that the original findings may have been represented differently by the secondary source. So try to find the original source, and then you can rely on the secondary sources for modifications or any other upgradations in the methodology, especially for the methodology, right? If you're citing the method in your study, if you get hold of the primary source, find that source, right? Because that will give you an idea how the entire method was developed. And then rely on the secondary sources for modifications and upgradations, okay? Then have a thorough understanding of your sources. So you should accurately communicate, sources, if you understand the sources properly, how will it help you? It will help you in accurately communicating their ideas and their terminologies, and you have to also see whether your interpretation of the data is correct or not. Or maybe if you have a different interpretation of the data, then you also need to substantiate your interpretation with some facts, okay? Then what will you do while writing? What will you do? You will avoid plagiarism. You will avoid self-plagiarism. Overly citing your own work is also not considered good, right? So there are two types of plagiarisms. Plagiarism, like you can cite somebody's source without, if you cite it properly, then it's not plagiarism, it's not misconduct. Misconduct happens when you do not cite the source. So you can take get inspired from ideas of other people, but you have to give proper citation to them, right? But what considers to be misconduct? Too much citation of your own work, which is called as self-plagiarism. What is self-plagiarism? Where you cite your own work. There are reasons that you might have to cite your own work. Probably you developed that method, right? So obviously in your next paper, if you're using the same method, you will cite your work, right? Isn't it? So that kind of citation is not irresponsible. It's not considered to be misconduct. But if you're overly citing your work without any rhyme and reason, that will be considered as misconduct. So write your sources, do not plagiarize, use your own words and sentence structure. Maintain the intended meaning of the paper, right, of the source. So do you think it will happen easily, or do you think that you'll have to spend some time in reading the papers? You will have to spend some time, and you have to have good understanding of what you are reading. So that includes, improving your research comprehension skills, right? These are two different things: reading something and comprehending what the meaning is. That's why they are saying that when you cite your source, do not plagiarize, use your own words, and maintain the intended meaning of the source. Means like you need to understand whether you have comprehended the material well or not, right? Okay, so there is a term called as research comprehension, right? Write it down and find out what it means. Okay, research comprehension. In fact, there are certain institutes in the country who have devised mechanisms, who have devised tests for research scholars and postgraduate students to find out what their level of research comprehension is, right? It's something, I mean, it's like the introductory test, like when you'll be applying for assistant professorship, what kind of test will you be taking? I mean, which test, if you pass that test, that makes you eligible for assistant professorship, national eligibility test, right? So at some point of time, we may, and for your research, which exam is necessary? NET exam, right? Isn't it? So NET is also required for research. NET is also required for assistant professorship. So in addition to NET, there are some tests which research scholars have to undertake in other institutes to understand what it gives us an understanding of what your research comprehension is, right? What is the level of your research comprehension? What is the level of your aptitude for research, right? So some institutes have their own tests where they give these additional tests to the students in addition to their net and gate scores, right? Okay. So is that do you understand this thing? But you can always subject yourself to these tests because some of these tests are available online. You can always take these tests and see whether you are improving, your comprehension is improving or not, right? There's always a room for improvement. What should you avoid? You should avoid selective reporting. So selective reporting as in numbers, selective reporting as in data, right? Data points. You should not selectively report data. You should not selectively report studies while writing a paper. Okay. So earlier also we had talked about the discussion portion of a paper, right? Every paper has introduction, then methods and methodology, then results, and then discussion. In the discussion portion, you should always put your result in perspective. Perspective of previous studies which have supported your data, and perspective of previous studies which may not support your data, right? So your discussion portion should have amalgamation of both types of studies, right? So when you write a balanced discussion, that means you have not selectively reported while citing the papers or while writing your paper or comprehending your result. Okay? So discussion portion is the soul of your paper. So it has to give a good understanding to the reader. Because when you publish, what are you trying to do? You're trying to disseminate your findings to the audience. That audience may be a layman, that audience may be the scientific community, that audience may be people who are working in your area. So they need to have a holistic understanding of how you are presenting your work, right? So refer to both types of studies which are corroborating your result and studies that are antagonizing your result, right? There might be studies which are not showing the same kind of results. So they would have given you a reason for why they are getting the result that they are getting. Is it clear? Okay? Wow. I have a good, bright audience. Very good. Thank you. So we'll take the questions at the end. When you publish, we have talked about three types of misconduct while giving authorship. What were those? Gift authors, ghost authors, and gift authors, ghost authors, guest authors. So who are ghost authors? Ghost authors. Ghost authors are those authors who might have written a paper. No, they would have written the whole paper. They would have assembled the whole paper, but maybe they are not part of the authorship because they are somebody is paying them for writing the paper, right? Somebody means like probably the supervisor, probably the student is paying them for writing the paper. This is an unethical practice. Period. Okay, you have to learn. PhD is a training, right? So you cannot train your student if you are not yourself trained well. Okay, so you cannot delegate this process of paper writing to somebody for money. Okay, isn't it? The process of paper writing cannot be delegated to a third party for upon for payment, right? So those are ghost authors. Who are these guest authors? They are not participated, but you gave them authorship because probably you thought that inclusion of those authors would improve the possibility of the publication of your paper. Only include those who have made substantial contribution to a project. So anybody who has helped you in conceiving the project, who has helped you in executing the work, who has helped you in making your manuscript better by giving intellectual contributions, they can be part of the authorship. So you need to make a comparison in your mind, who can be an author and who cannot be an author on your paper, and when will you decide this, when will you make this decision? Is it better to make the decision right at the beginning of the study or at the end? It's always better to have a pre-agreement, okay, to avoid hassles later on. But there may be studies where you require you require a data point which was not included earlier. So at that point of time, you have to have a transparent collaboration. Okay. And if you want to learn more about ethical writing, you can go to this website. ORI is Office of Research Integrity, and you can find out more if you want, if you are interested, right? This is an ongoing process. The interest does not end with this class. It has to go on for your lifetime. Then we'll talk about predatory journals. So we have written a big note: authors and readers, beware. Beware of whom? Of these journals, which are categorized as predatory journals. What are these predatory journals? Predatory journals are people from zoology and others people. I think the predatory term is very common. Yes. What do you understand by predatory? I mean, when we say predatory, what comes to your mind? Does anything come to your mind when we say this word predatory?
An organism which consumes other organisms.
Yeah, consumes. It's a relationship which is probably not beneficial to both, right? Predatory and prey. So these predatory journals, I'll come to why they were called as predatory. So predatory journals are open access journals that publish articles online with little or no peer review. Right? So basically, you send your paper to these journals, which are categorized under the category of predatory journals. They may not review your paper, but if you promise them that you will pay them the article processing charges, they will publish your paper overnight. Okay. So is that an ethical process? No, it's not. And what does the author? What do you stand to lose as a researcher? you lose your data integrity, so lose the in addition to that, you lose the time that you have spent in harvesting data, isn't it? Acquiring that data, doing that research. So on an average, you would spend at least 3 years of your life, minimum 3 years, and people from biology maybe 4 to 5 years, right? So you're spending 5 years of your life on something which is based upon falsehood, right? And maybe your work was true, but you did not do proper diligence while choosing the journal. So you fell prey to the predatory journal. You published your data in a predatory journal, which did not help you, because if you publish in these predatory journals, your research will not be counted. Okay, the publication that is a part of any kind of predatory journal will not be considered for your what promotions, will not be considered for your appointment, right? Okay, is it clear? So how will you identify? So they exist to publish scholarly journal articles for authors who require publications for their curriculum vitae. And why do these authors require these publications for their CV? For their promotions, for maybe awards, maybe for acquiring certain favors, yeah, right? So, or certain favors like maybe for their projects also they require a lot of publications for acquiring projects, promotions, awards, right? Papers are required, but it's always better to focus on quality papers and papers which have been published in authentic journals. So these predatory journals came into existence when there was a lot of requirement for publications to enhance CV of people. So predatory journals, what is their benefit? They profit from author fees, often from authors who cannot afford the fees required by more reputable pay for publication journals. Now there are a lot of publishing houses which are very good, but still they ask for article processing charges. But article processing charges come later for the authentic publishing houses, right? If you have an authentic publication house, like many publication houses are there, like Springer and Elsevier, okay, Nature Publishing Group, they also charge article processing charges, but that comes later. First, the paper has to go through the peer review process. Only after the paper has been accepted through the thorough peer review, process, then only it can be sent for publication, and then they may ask you to furnish the article processing charges. But in predatory journals, it's totally reverse. There is no peer review process. If you are ready to pay the money, the article will be published without any thorough understanding and deliberation on the data, right? So they profit from your fees. Numerous journals appeared throughout the early 2000s, promising quick publication, high acceptance rate, and low author fees. So whenever you go to the journal website, you will be choosing journals for your publications. So you have this tool called as Journal Finder. Maybe Dr. Raja would be discussing more about it. Our chief librarian. Maybe you have the classes later on with him. So you would go to this tool called as Journal Finder. So in the journal finder, you need to put the name of the journal in which you want to publish, and you will get the metrics of that journal, right? In one corner of the page, you will also find the rate of acceptance. So for example, a journal has a very high rate of acceptance. That should be a red flag in your mind, right? It should immediately switch a red flag in your mind that something is wrong with this journal, right? So high acceptance rate, quick publication time, and low author fees, these are some hallmarks of a predatory journal. In fact, we now have a list. We now have a list which gives you an entire list of predatory journals. Okay. This is old data. We can look for more data. In 2015, there were as many as 10,000 predatory journals worldwide. With और बढ़ गए. How to identify predatory journals? Some have similar names to established, respected journals. Okay, it's like Reebok and Reebok, right? Okay, so when you have to create a false alias, what will you do? You will make a slight change which is not noticeable. And if you are in a hurry and you have not, diligently looked for the journal, you may miss the minor detail, right? So they generally have mirrors of they are mirror images of established journals, right? Some have similar names to established, respected journals, and sometimes falsely claim to have well-known experts on their editorial board. So, like they clone the previous journals, they create a clone of the previous well-respected journals, maybe science, right? For example, we take the example of science. It's a very well-known journal, but the starts with capital S. So what they might have done is they would have made it small. The entire thing later on would be similar to science. They would have created the website like the original journal, right? Or for example, you have a journal of neurodegeneration, right? So the journal of neurodegeneration starts with J, right? Capital J. So they would put a small j, and I mean it's very difficult to find these faults, but it's necessary. It's necessary to spend time on these exercises. Their websites are sometimes unprofessional, but no, this was an old story. Earlier, you could figure out that from the website itself, you could figure out that the journal does not look okay, right? It does not look professionally made. But now, the times have changed. They are so professional. The websites are so professionally managed that it's very difficult to distinguish between an original journal and a cloned journal. They have high acceptance rates of submitted articles and quick publication time, owing to no, in fact, little is too far fetched. No peer review, no peer. There is often no mention of author fees until after an article is accepted. This is another story, right? Sometimes the author may get lured, you may get attracted to a particular journal because in the article processing charges, they were claiming that they will not charge anything, right? Okay, you sent your paper to the journal, they went for a quick review. I mean, obviously they were not reviewing it, but they sent you a letter of acceptance that, okay, your work was so good and you are such a great author and you have presented a very good paper, so we have accepted you. And they use very flowery language to attract you. So, do we have permission to print your paper? So once you give them the permission, your corresponding author, once you give them the permission, then they will hound you for money. Okay, like the cyber fraud scams. They operate like the similarly. Like once your corresponding author has sent a letter of acceptance, okay, like we are ready to publish in your journal, they will start asking for money. It may not be a huge amount of money, but nevertheless, money would be exchanged, right? Entire publication companies have brought up other publication companies and produced almost entirely predatory journals. Now there are publication houses who just publish predatory journals. One example is of Omics Publishing Group, right? Omics Group at one point of time was considered to be a very respectable publication house, and a lot of papers, good papers were published in Omics Publishing Group. Okay, OPG Group. It was an open access journal publisher and a conference organizer. So Omics Group not only were consolidating, like they were not only a company for predatory journals, but they were also a company for conducting predatory conferences. Okay, so where they would send you flyers of conferences, invite you to submit your work, maybe invite your guide to be a presenter or a part of editorial board, extract money in the form of registration fee, and then vanish from the from where from the globe, right? Just become underground. So in 2016, the US Federal Trade Commission filed a lawsuit against Omics Publishing Group for deceptive academic publishing practices. Okay, three of the cases are still going on. The publishing group also hosts more than 3,000 conferences of dubious quality annually, which generates 60% of its revenue. So they created this business model for revenue generation. And where were they getting this revenue from? Gullible researchers, gullible, innocent PIs who wanted to be, genuinely wanted to be part of the conference, right? In 2008, this gentleman, Jeffrey Beal, okay, Jeffrey Beal, remember this name, right? Jeffrey Beal, who was a scholarly communications librarian and an associate professor at the University of Colorado, Denver, he became aware of the growing number of these questionable journals, right? Because he was a librarian, he had access to a lot of databases which were helping in publication of journals, and he undertook this project of sanitizing the sanitizing and whistleblowing about the dubious publication practices. And what did he coin? He coined the term predatory journals for all these kinds of journals. And they all the most of the predatory journals are now part of a list called as Beal's list. What is it called? Beal's list. Who created Beal's list? Jeffrey Beal. And what was his profession? He was an associate professor of library sciences, right? So this gentleman also conducted a research, right? Isn't it? It's a research. He worked on a data set and figured out about dubious practices going on in the publication world, right? So he created Beal's list using certain criteria to determine if a journal was a potential, possible, or probable predatory journal or publisher, right? So when you decide on choosing a journal for your work, you will first look at Beal's list, right? What will your source be? Beal's list, because any journal which is part of the Beal's list is a journal where you do not want to publish, right? Why? Because they are dubious, they are predatory in nature, right? They are predatory journals, okay? So Beal's list is a comprehensive list of journals which may be potential, possible, or probable predatory journals or publishers, okay? In 2015, Shen and George examined the characteristics of articles published in predatory journals, randomly choosing 613 journals from the Beal's list. 40%, 45% of the journals originated in Asia and Africa, 27% in India alone, and 25% in North America and Europe. And more than 3/4 of the authors were from Asia and Africa. Now, certain other publication houses have also been included in this list, and the diversity of nationalities of the authors who have indulged in malpractice is also available on the website. Okay. We can, in addition to Beale's list, we can also use the journal black list created by Cabell's International. Okay. Generally, Beale's list is comprehensive. It's a good comprehensive list of predatory journals. But if you want to be doubly sure, you can also visit Cabell's International. Okay. A well-regarded publisher of a long-standing journal directory that uses certain criteria to ascertain whether a journal might be predatory, right? Okay. And then you can also visit thinkchecksubmit.org. Think, check, submit. Thinking has been given the first priority, isn't it? Think, think before you submit, because you have to think about your data all the time. Think how you can interpret it, right? How you can make the correct interpretation. Think, submit, think, check, and submit. Think, check, and submit. So every time you have to check. What do you have to check? That checklist, which I talked about in the first class, publication checklist. Whether you have checked most of the points in the checklist has a tick mark, right? Okay. So you can visit these websites also. Now we have been talking about what how we come to know. So this predatory journal was when you were choosing your journals for publication, right? Think after thinking, checking, and submitting, right? Now your article has been published, right? So I was talking about post-publication review process also, right? So some of the now that your article is available in open domain, so anybody can see whether your article uh, was written well, I mean, did it follow all the guidelines for responsible conduct of research. So for over a set of data, people sat like detectives, like scientists. They were a set of people who were freelancers. They were scientists, they were researchers, they were research scholars, they were people who were very worried about the integrity of data, right? Which is available in the database, isn't it? The data that we publish, the data that we get in the form of journal publications, that is available to us, isn't it? It's available to us to make a hypothesis based upon that, right? To get an idea about how we can implement those results in our studies, right? If that data is not correct, obviously the uh, landscape of research becomes spurious. It becomes contaminated, if I may use the word. It is a contaminated source of primary data, right? So people understood this challenge, and they got together and decided to evaluate papers for integrity of data, right? And that is how Retraction Watch came into existence. So the genesis of Retraction Watch. What is it? Retraction Watch. Retraction Watch is a database in which you will have list of journals or studies that have been retracted from the literature. Why were they retracted from the literature? What do you understand by retraction? Withdrawal from the data sources, withdrawal from the accessible material to you, withdrawal from the accessible literature to you. And why have these papers been retracted? Because it was found that the data that was published in these papers was of dubious nature, right? They probably it was falsified, probably the data was fabricated, probably there was any other issues could have been in the paper. So all these papers were collated together with evidence, and they were put on this website called as Retraction Watch. So if you visit Retraction Watch, what do you expect to get? What information do you expect to get?
Information about retracted papers.
Information about the retracted papers. So how do you benefit from this website?
Which publication we have to.
Yes, so you get information about which publication to avoid while designing your work, right? Right, isn't it? So when you decide on writing your thesis or your synopsis, you will be referring to some material while writing your synopsis. So all the references which you are citing in your synopsis, you should double check whether, what should you double check it for? Whether they are a part of Retraction Watch or not, right? Some of them may not be part of Retraction Watch, but if they are, you should not cite those papers. You should not base your study on those papers, right? So Retraction Watch helps in tracking retractions as a window into the scientific process of responsible conduct of research. I'm always using RCR, responsible conduct of research. Multiple steps of research. We have talked about 7 steps of research, right? So at every step, you have to conduct yourself responsibly, right? To keep yourself safe and the data landscape safe too. So Retraction Watch database, you can visit the site called as Retraction Watch, and it's just like a regular search engine. You type your author's name, like the reference that you are putting in your synopsis. You can put that reference in this database. If it pops up, obviously you will avoid that citation or reference. If it does not pop up today, right, you can proceed with including that data in your reference. But that doesn't mean that that cannot be forged, right? So how will you design your work? You will design your work based upon probably reputable authors, and based on the work of reputed authors or something which has been already the proof of concept of some idea which is already there lab in the lab in which you will be working. These are certain case studies. These are very interesting case studies. I decided on including these. Okay, and I cannot find this. Okay, so if you want to read the entire case study, you can visit the website. I am going to share this presentation along with the links. So if you are interested in following it up, you can follow it up through the links that are provided. So 8 papers of a particular author were retracted. Why were they retracted? Because the author was fictitious, right? The author, one of the authors, who was part of these 8 studies was found to be fictitious, and the gentleman had published in Elsevier journals, right? Elsevier journals retracted 8 studies after learning that one of the authors on the papers was fictitious. Who was the author? Toshiyuki Bangi. He had used an affiliation with School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Nanyang Technical University in Singapore, right? Now, NTU did not know that this gentleman is a part of their faculty, okay, because the person was not a part of Singapore, this university, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, right? So this author created a fictitious identity for himself, published 8 papers, right? Obviously, he or she must not have done that work. So where did he get the data for all these 8 papers? From databases, right? From older studies, maybe compiled all the data together, created 8 papers. Then he created an alias for himself, right? He associated himself with Nanyang Technical University in Singapore. So what must have happened? Like it must have been difficult for these people in Singapore to, find out. So what must have happened? Probably these papers were retracted because their data was of dubious quality. The journals might have written to Nanyang that this gentleman is not following responsible, is not performing research responsibly. They would have written to the employer, and the employer is shocked because the gentleman is not part of that employing agency, right? So this author had created a fictitious alias for himself, right? Okay, I had talked about it earlier too. Like there are cases where reviewers found out that they were a part of review process of a paper. Okay, right? So these are some of the reasons, newer reasons, older reasons we have talked about in detail. Like some papers had falsified data, some papers had fabricated data. This is a new kind of innovation that has happened in the publication world, where the author created a fictitious identity for himself, right? Okay, so 8 of his papers got retracted probably because they wrote to Singapore, NTU Singapore wrote back that okay, we do not have this person as part of our faculty. Let's go to another story. And a professor, I mean, this is worst. A professor found her name on an article she didn't write. Okay. And obviously, she got this unpleasant surprise because she was looking for. I mean, we generally have this habit of collating our research publications, right? Some of the publications automatically get added to our scholar profile or our Scopus ID, right? So that is why Scopus ID is important, ORCID ID is important. Every author has a ORCID ID and Scopus ID. We as faculty members have Vidwan ID, so that at least make sure that our identity is true. Okay, Vidwan ID, ORCID ID, Scopus ID. Every author can create this profile. Okay, so what did she find? I mean, she was a senior lecturer in the University of Central Florida School of Politics, and she was listed as a sole author on an article, only author, which she had not written. And not only that, I mean, obviously this was not a good practice. This was an unethical practice on the part of whoever has done it. We'll come to that, who did it. They had collated previous studies, combined them together, jumbled them together, and wrote an entirely new paper under her authorship. So they took data from previous studies. So that means they plagiarized material from previous respectable journals, and they published the same work under her authorship. Okay.
What is the benefit?
What is the benefit? It's the benefit to the syndicate, publication house, because the publication house is stealing identity of people for getting money out of these publications, because they.
But this one, I think, since she's not the one publishing.
So she is saved because she was not part of it.
But those publishers, those people that send the article using her name,
Yes.
what is their benefit?
What is their benefit?
Yeah.
Because if somebody reads it, you may not get access to the publication total as a researcher. For example, you want to refer to that paper. I'm going to explain it in a bit. 1 second, I'll explain
Okay, thank you.
it. So the paper that they had used to write her paper was a respectable, the paper from which they had copied was a very respectable paper. It was a policy paper in a Journal of Energy Policy, a very respectable paper. So they just lifted material from the original paper, which was published in Journal of Energy Policy, published in her name because probably she might be an authority in that field, right? Okay. So as a researcher, if you think that, okay, these 3 or 4 people in statistics are very good, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would you not try to get papers which are from them,
Yes.
right? From them. So if you do not have access to the author, right? We sometimes write to the author that please provide us the paper because we are interested in your studies and we want to incorporate those studies in our synopsis or our research. Probably you did not have access to that, so you would purchase that paper from the publishers, right? So from your publication fees, they are getting benefit. Those people who have stolen her identity and are publishing in her name, right? So the publication house, because as a consumer, you are a consumer, isn't it? We are consumers. When we have these papers in subscription mode, when we subscribe those papers, we are paying for subscription, right? Aren't we?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Have I made myself clear?
Yes, that's clear.
Right? So as a part of subscription fee, that subscription fee that we give to these dubious publishing houses is their benefit, right? That is why they are proliferating, right? Okay?
Yes, yes.
People on that side, have you understood what he was asking?
Yes.
And have you understood why, how those people who have stolen her identity are, getting benefited? So these were some 2 new, modus operandi that I wanted to discuss with you. The older modus operandi, you are, quite familiar with that because we have talked about them comprehensively in the past, so many classes. Okay. Then Biox RX IV, Biox review. It's a preprint server for biology. Okay. Preprint server for biology. Similarly, a preprint server for pharmacy is also available. So what is the benefit of this preprint server? Before sending your paper for publication to any journal, you can upload your paper here. You can get reviews, peer review done online by researchers who are interested in giving you the peer review so that you can, that it kind of saves you from getting cheated. Okay? Because your work is already there. People know that you are the one who is working on a particular area. This is a preprint server. This is a post-print server. This is a post-publication server. PubPeer. What is PubPeer? PubPeer is a website that allows users to discuss and review scientific research after publication. That is why it's called as post-publication peer review. All right?
Is it like ResearchGate?
Uh, ResearchGate is different. PubPeer is again a website which is managed by scientific sleuths, detectives.
Okay.
Okay, sleuths, SLEUTH, detectives. So these detectives are common people like you and me, but they are interested in keeping the research landscape sanitized. So they are just looking for papers which may be of dubious quality so that the entire research database can be sanitized. They are responsible for maintaining the data hygiene related to different papers, but this is post publication when your paper is already there, already published. So maybe 10 years from now, somebody may be able to detect erroneous data in your publication, right? This site had served as a whistleblowing platform in that it highlighted shortcomings in several high-profile papers, in some cases leading to retractions and to accusations of scientific fraud as noted by Retraction Watch. So now Retraction Watch and Papier are working in collaboration with each other. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, this work has become easier. Though the other area has also become easier, like picking up data, picking up picking up tables from previous studies may have become easier with AI, but detecting the fraud has also become much easier. We talked about so many tools. We talked about the photo forensic tools. We talked about image twin. We talked about IMA check. Revise those lectures because you need to be aware of what these tools are and how they can be used for maintaining data hygiene. So the site has served as a whistleblowing platform. Contrary to many platforms, it allows anonymous post-publication commenting. Okay. So earlier in Retraction Watch, we have clear data about which the group was, so who the authors were. You also get description of what was the nature of misconduct. So you have an Excel sheet which tells you everything about a paper that has been retracted, right? But in PubPeer, the commenters can comment anonymously. So somebody can comment on a particular piece of data if they find some kind of erratic, if it is erratic in nature. Okay, this is one case that I want to discuss about penalty. It's a real-time penalty that has been given to gentleman Jan Sean. I think earlier also I had referred to this case. Jan Sean loses his PhD. Where, in the previous lecture, I think we discussed in detail about the penalties that are there as per guidelines if somebody is found guilty of indulging in malpractice. So what did this gentleman do? A German court had ruled that it is legal to revoke the PhD of disgraced physicist Jan Sean. Why? Because this gentleman was associated with very reputable lab. Okay, so any person working in the area of physics would refer to their work, right? To the work with which the gentleman was, to the lab with which the gentleman was associated with. So not only was his employment quashed, his PhD was also revoked because it was found that he had been falsifying data from his PhD days. So the PhD, the doctoral thesis in which the person was a student, scholar, was falsified. And further, later on the basis of reputation of the lab in which he had worked, he might have got good position in some employment agency, the university. So multiple benefits that he had got as a result of that dubious nature of the PhD was revoked. So it was found that it's better to revoke his PhD. तो PhD lose कर सकते हैं हम. किस वजह से PhD lose कर सकते हैं? Why would somebody lose his or her PhD? Because of misconduct. So it goes right. I mean, it's like snakes and ladders. You reach 99, come back to 0, maybe 0 or 2. I don't know. I have played snakes and ladders, long back, right? So you come back to square one, but there is no option of going back to academia because of so many, because the person becomes blacklisted, right? This is another case, very, very famous case, stem cell case. Okay. It's very sad, I mean, because this stem cell biology was a breakthrough technology in 2005, 2006, and everybody was so elated that now we have some kind of technology help in which will help in elevating most of the diseases, right? So it's one breakthrough technology which was identified, which was updated by this gentleman, Dr. Huang Suk, a professor at Seoul National University. He published two papers in the journal Science, okay, claiming his team had succeeded in creating human embryonic stem cells through cloning. I mean, it was a breakthrough story at that point of time. They appeared on Time, but they appeared on Time for as a fallen idol. But then his studies, since they had appeared in the journal Science, they were widely cited, and the entire scientific world was elated that we got a real big breakthrough. But allegations were raised by a co-worker that that paper was based on fabricated data. Okay, right. So the allegation is fine as far as fine in the sense like somebody may allege that okay, the data shown in a particular paper is fabricated, right? Everybody is entitled to his or her opinion, right? What went wrong here was when the allegation was raised by a co-worker that the data is fabricated, the PI and other workers on the study could not produce documentation of data, right? They could not produce documentation of how the data was acquired and stored. So please remember, data recording is very, very important, right? You should have day-to-day record of what kind of data you obtained on that day, right? Especially students in biology, other sciences, all of you, I mean, I should not make this distinction. All of you should make a day-to-day log of what you have acquired today, right? Gradually, electronic notebooks are also going to be part of our research culture. Electronic notebooks, right, where you will not have an option of editing your data. So you have to record the data there and then. So the problem with these people was that they were not able to show any record of acquired data which was supporting their study, right? In fact, they had also not stored the stem cells which they were claiming to have cloned. I mean, at least you need to have a record of what you have created, isn't it? So if you're showing that you have created a new organism, have a record of that. Deposit it in a bank. I mean, we have banks, tissue banks, blood bank. We have microbial banks, repositories, right? You have chemical banks, like if you are, for chemistry people, right? For biology people, you have tissue banks. If you are creating a new structure, you can, upload it on the proper databases and it will get stored. They did not store the stem cells that they had cloned. So they were not able to produce any kind of evidence suggesting that they have actually done the experiments, right? So the entire study was quashed, investigations proved misconduct, the papers were retracted, Dr. Huang lost his position at Seoul National University and was sentenced to term in jail, right? Oh, Korea, like they were in Korea, so they didn't, I mean, it brought a lot of disgrace to the country and the community in general. So that is why we have to be very respectful of our own reputations and the reputation of the organizations and other people associated with you. Okay, so here again, I mean, you can go through these on your own. So this is again a reference to Sean's study. I mean, Jan Sean, who lost his PhD and his position in the university. He was working in Bell Laboratories, right? It's considered to be one of the best places for physics research. I mean, in Bell's, he just tarnished the image of Bell Laboratories. So he created a condition of breach of trust for that, right? Isn't it? You can go through it on your own. So this is case study 2. After his first major grant is coming to an end, so we'll just go through it. Several important elements of Dr. Sanjay K's research suddenly fall into place. The last series of experiments his graduate student ran clearly linked the gene they are studying to a particular type of cancer. His postdoc's work on the proteins associated with this gene could pave the way for possible cures. With these results in hand, he is finally ready to make a strong case for continued support and happily and his pending promotion. All he has to do now is to publish the results, right? So based upon these, whatever, based upon a particular set, this is just a case study. It's just for your understanding. So based upon the results that you might be getting in your lab, based upon the authenticity of that result, your guide may decide that he or she wants to write a research proposal based upon your results, right? So how important is the authenticity of your results for the guide? Very important. Why? Because he or she is basing the entire story on the authenticity of your results. So this gentleman here, decided that, okay, I'll publish this result because the results look promising, and maybe in his mind he might have thought, okay, I'll get a multi-crore grant, I'll get a promotion, right? But what went wrong? A week later, Sanjay's optimism starts to fade. His department chair was like, okay, as this is just, but then suggested that the first paper announcing the results came out under her name to give it. Okay, as might have been expected, his department chair was delighted with his progress, but then suggested that the first paper announcing the results come out under her name to give it broader circulation. Meanwhile, his postdoc and graduate student have gotten into a heated debate about the order of their names. Order of the names in which they should appear, who should be the first or third happens sometimes. That is why you should have a pre-agreement about the authorship, so that these hassles are not, we take care of the hassles right in the beginning. So the authorship has to be upon the nature of contribution to the study. The university's public should agree on the paper, should appear on the paper in a particular order. So what happened? Sanjay is dreaming about his promotion based upon this paper. Like now the paper is still in infancy. They have got the results, they'll write the paper. Upon publication of the paper, Sanjay will get promotion. Sanjay is some fictitious name, so don't take it. It's a disclaimer, right? That I'm giving right away. So the head said that, okay, it's great you are trying to publish a paper, but please put my name in that, right? The postdoc and the researcher got into a debate who should be the author, right? So now what to do? The university's public affairs officer has asked for a summary of the results for a press release, and the technology transfer officer has called telling him to hold all publications until they can evaluate the commercial potential of this work. Now there are multiple things that are getting addressed by this case study, right? What are the things that are getting addressed? Have a pre-agreement wherever possible. Have a written consent from all the authors who are a part of this author when you are sending it for publication, right? Decide on which papers can be held back because some of the work may be suitable for patent, right? So you do not want to publish that right away. You can file a patent and talk with your technology transfer office. And thirdly, he also has to navigate how he can avoid putting name of the head as part of the authors. Is the head entitled to be a part of authorship? Is this?
If he has
No,
done
if he or she has contributed intellectually, then he or she is a part of, is entitled to be a part of the authorship. Just by the position, by being in a particular position, it does not entitle anybody to be a part of the authorship. So there are multiple issues that are being covered in this particular case study, right? And their university's public affairs officer and other offices asked for the data. So obviously when they'll ask for the data, they'll review the data. So the data has to be have to be of robust integrity, right? Okay. So this case study tells you about why you should acquire your data, record your data properly. The previous case study was also stem cell case was telling you about recording your data responsibly. Okay. This you can go through on your own. Darcy, what happened to Darcy? Darcy is a case where he had gifted authorship to the dean, and the poor person thought that by virtue of being the dean is supposed to be a part of all the papers that are being published from the department. That's not the case. Okay. Suggested reading is you can go through this article, what universities can learn from one of the biggest scientific frauds. You can go through annual reviews on scientific misconduct. Okay. I'm just telling you the mission of Retraction Watch. The mission of Retraction is a website that keeps an eye on scientific integrity and helps draw attention to how researchers, journals, and institutions correct the scientific record. The mission of its parent organization, the Center for Scientific Integrity, is to promote. What is the mission of CSI, Center for Scientific Integrity? It is to promote transparency and integrity in science and scientific publishing, and to disseminate best practices and increase efficiency in science. So all of you are equally responsible for maintaining the data integrity on different websites. From now on, whenever you generate some data, all of you are responsible for maintaining that integrity. And this center has been funded by the MacArthur and Arnold Foundations and the Hemsley Trust, and it's building a comprehensive and freely available database of retractions for scientists, scholars, and journalists.
So is there any other retraction sites for social sciences?
Yes, I'll tell you. Okay, this was another study where the medical resident had published 5 papers in which his wife had peer reviewed the papers. I mean, this is a real life case, but it can be your friend, it can be, you can create a fictitious account of a review, not you, but the people sometimes create. These dubious publication houses also create fictitious accounts of potential reviewers. Like it can be created in your name, in the name of your guide, and they may display that so and so is a part of our reviewing process. which raises our tally of retracted papers on the pandemic to 89. This article has been retracted based on the discovery that the submitting author invited his wife to serve as a peer reviewer without properly disclosing this relationship. So did they have any conflict of interest?
Yes.
This is a case study for research misconduct and conflict of interest. So they should have disclosed the relationship, and then the wife would not have been a potential reviewer on the paper. As this fraudulent peer review was completed and taken into consideration when determining whether to publish this article. All right, that's fine. Okay, then there is another term that you should be aware of. It's called as citation stacking. Write it down, please. Nature revealed the hidden workings of a scheme referred to as citation stacking that has landed a number of journals in trouble, right? And the story begins like this. This gentleman, Silva, thought that he has spotted an easy way to raise the profiles of Brazilian journals. From 2009, he and several other editors published articles containing hundreds of references to papers in each other's journals. So they were citing each other's papers, which was increasing the citation. This practice of overly citing certain papers for pulling up the number of citations is called as citation stacking. What is it called? This practice is called as citation stacking. Okay. The citation stacking plan was discovered, right? Because they found that a lot of self-plagiarism was happening, and a lot of references were being cited by each other without any comprehensible value addition to the journal, to the paper. This is an activity that you should try to do on your own and let us know what the answers are going to be. And finally, I would close at this, and I would suggest that you go, if you have time, you can watch this movie called The Fugitive, right? So it will again give you a understanding of what can happen and how people can be implicated in cases which deal with irresponsible research conduct or misconduct of research, right? So we'll stop here. All right, please call Shakir. We need to close it down. So I'll be sharing the material course content through Mr. Ghazali, and if there are any other means by which it can be shared, I can do that. So I'll be sharing the presentation and the reference material books which you have to study for your this part of the RPE course. All right. So please call Mr. Shakir. He can close it down.
Sometimes I get a dilemma of confusion that research comparison versus rephrasing in my own language.
Rephrasing of what?
Whatever you studied and understood the paper. So there is a research comparison, which means that we are getting some idea or information from the research paper, and we are interpreting with our own previous knowledge. And I'm rephrasing versus I'm rephrasing some part of my knowledge with the research paper what I studied. So what is the how to defend this? That I am
You don't need to defend it. I mean, with practice, you will get better. But if you have doubts, you yourself have doubts about whether you have interpreted, for example, if you have studied a particular paper related to your work and think that the interpretation that you are doing may not be correct, discuss with your guide, discuss with your senior, make the points about what they are, like what the paper is claiming, what your understanding of their work is, and then if you have doubts, if you yourself feel that whether I have comprehended it properly or not, you can discuss with your guide, right? That is where the role of your PI comes in, because you are getting trained. We do not expect you to start working behaving like a trained research scholar on day one. There are some prerequisites which you might have addressed in your masters, but we also understand that you still need some guidance and training. That is why you are allotted a guide, right? From postdoc, you will be on your own. That is why this doctoral training is very, very important. It has to be taken seriously, because right now you have a mentor, right? After 5 years, you will be on your own, where you cannot, spoil the career of anybody else. Right? So whatever doubts you have, whatever if you feel that you need to spend some more time on your studies, do that in this field. So that is why research was, doing PhD was a vocation. I mean, was a very rarely people used to go for doctoral studies because they understood how rigorous it was. Right? So that rigor you have to build in yourself. And paraphrasing, rephrasing will automatically come when you build that type of thing. And that will come with practice. That will come with practice. You will not, it's not